Hey everybody, and thanks so much for tuning into Season 2 of the River City Waves podcast. We're really glad that you're here, and the goal of River City Waves podcast is simply to have conversations about some of life's most important questions, and we're grateful that you decided to give it a listen or a watch from wherever you're consuming the content. Listen, our heart is that today's topic and conversation would minister to you and will hopefully be insightful and wisdom-filled information and conversation that will draw you closer to Jesus. That's our prayer for you today. Season 2 episodes are all about being well and how we as Christians can approach our lives from a perspective of spiritual wellness. Know that we're praying for you, and we hope that you enjoy and glean new wisdom from today's talk. We're excited about today's content, so let's join Pastor Robby for today's River City Waves podcast.
Hey everybody, so glad that you've joined us today. Listen, I've got two of my favorite people here to talk with us about something that is certain to help you if you're in a relationship or hope to be or whatever. That's Pastor Adam and Sarah Howard. They are been a part of this church basically their whole lives, and they started dating in the crib. That's what I heard. And then they got married, and they have children. They have 3 kids, and they have one on the way.
That's right.
I got some stories about that, but today they're going to talk about SYMBIS. They are certified SYMBIS facilitators. SYMBIS stands for Save Your Marriage Before It Starts. We're going to hear more about that. And the reason why we're including that here is because, relationships have so much to do with mental health. There's an incredible tie there. The better your relationships are, in many ways, you're going to be buoyed by that strength in your life. And if your relationships are like visiting the same car crash over and over, that's gonna take a toll too. So we're gonna hear about that in just a second. But before we get to that, you got to know something about Pastor Adam. You may not know it, but he is a storied volleyball player.
Oh,
tell me this, Pastor Adam. Do you have any story-worthy events that have happened at a volleyball game?
Oh man. Well, things can get intense sometimes
in recreational volleyball leagues.
Recreational,
really,
volleyball game, but not necessarily a. Well, okay. Here's
I remember
a
you
specific.
telling me one time that you had joined a league and nobody knew you were a pastor. And
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
I didn't know if that was because you stopped acting like a pastor there on the volleyball intense field court or what.
It did help. I mean, it did
so
help.
So what's
in
the story?
beginning.
Tell me the story.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say a story that I always remember is sometimes, you can just really get a hold of the ball. And sometimes on the other end, it doesn't matter like how fast your reflexes are.
Yeah.
If a certain ball hit at a certain angle, then you just don't have too much to do but just stand there and take it. And I remember one time, this was a church league. This was I was.
Yeah. Somebody wasn't sanctified.
I was Pastor Adam
yeah,
in this moment, and I was really feeling it, and I just hit this ball as hard as I could hit it.
Oh, did you take down a young lady?
Yes. Bless her heart, and she was so gracious to me afterwards. But it could not have been worse. It was right in the sweet spot. And thankfully, I'm happy to say we're still friends to this day. It did turn out to be a bonding experience.
Wow.
You just never know. Sometimes you get blasted.
Yeah. Well, I heard a couple days ago about someone who got a concussion from the volleyball, like being spiked down on them. You ever heard of that? A concussion.
And what I'd also like to say about my story is that she ended up being fine, and the doctors checked her out, and she does have full recollection of that day.
Oh, that's good. Sarah, you are expecting a child in the next couple of months here?
Yes. Almost exactly 2 months from this moment.
And how do you feel right now? Are you the kind of person who you're on a high, you're like, I love to be pregnant. I could be pregnant for the next 16 years. Or are you like, I'm really a little bit tired here and ready to
I'm really glad you asked this. I want to know
see
the
this
answer
child
as
into the
well,
world
actually.
instead.
Well, I am not interested in being pregnant forever, over and over again. But I've done a relatively good job of convincing myself that I feel fine.
Oh, that's good.
And that worked for a while, and that is starting to wear off.
Wow.
But we do have a lot of work to do.
Well, you look like you feel great.
Well,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
all right. Well,
It's been hard.
so as I mentioned, this Pastor Adam and Sarah, they're involved in facilitating something called SYMBIS, Save Your Marriage Before It Starts. You can find a link there in your show notes for that. And I'm just wondering, guys, what for those unfamiliar, because probably a lot of people are unfamiliar with what this is. What is the SYMBIS program? What inspired its creation? Do you know?
Sure. Yes. It started as a tool for engaged couples to kind of learn about themselves, learn about each other, set themselves up for success in marriage. It became so popular that the authors of the book called Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts.
Is that okay? We can put that in the show notes as well.
Okay. Yeah.
That book, yeah.
Yeah. They ended up doing lots of research, partnering with people who could do the research on personality and bringing in statistics and all kinds of things surrounding lots of topics about marriage. And they put together a smart kind of adaptive assessment that asks each individual person all kinds of questions about their family history, about their personalities, about their financial, preferences and inclinations and those kinds of things, and kind of compiled all of this information. So then you get a compiled assessment, and it kind of outlines individual profiles, and it outlines your personality as a couple, and how certain things work together, how certain things might clash in your relationship. And then you just have the opportunity to talk through all of those things and to learn some tools to navigate conflict and communication differences and different preferences and those kinds of things.
And if I remember right, this couple, they're clinical psychologists, and their names?
Doctors Les and Leslie Parrott are their names.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I wonder if they parrot each other back and forth when they fight. I don't know.
But probably at this point they do have a lot in common that they would say.
Yeah, but very bright people. And this tool, if I understand right, it's like when you take it, you can't like fool it. You can't make yourself seem better, or like think to yourself, well, how can I be more, how can I come across through this test as more compatible or something like that, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
It's highly individualized.
It's yes, and it's so intuitive. It really, as you go, it's not only assessing what it feels like your personality type is and your experiences bring to the table, but it's also comparing that with your partner. And so it's measuring those things together. One of my favorite parts, actually, of the assessment is kind of, I always feel like it's fail-proof when we're with couples, is that even when the assessment is done and it's trying to tell you how it thinks that you are reacting and your personality and your communication skills and things, the SYMBIS experience itself, one of my favorite parts of it is once you lay that on the table, you get to ask yourselves, so that's what it says. Do you agree with that? Do you not agree with that? What parts of that do you connect with or don't? And so, yeah, it has a great intuitive ability to be fail-proof in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of times, if one couple has, if it doesn't line up with their lived experience, then one of them can say that doesn't fit me, or I don't see that in you. We haven't experienced that together. But it's just another opportunity to talk through, okay, so what is your reality, and how have you handled these situations?
Yeah, a lot of times they'll discover something about that they didn't see in themselves through that process. But other times its attempt to define them helps them actually to gain clarity on how they do see themselves or how they don't see themselves. And so, and that's always great when you're doing that in front of your fiance or in SYMBIS Plus, which we might get into later.
Yeah.
Your spouse, doing that in front of each other. That is there's so many angles of perspective going on. There's the perspective of the assessment at you. There's your perspective. There's your spouse's or your fiance's perspective well, no, that is true. There's these moments where, no, that is how you react. It is. So it's really intuitive.
Yeah. And when it comes to SYMBIS, now it gives you insights into expectations and how you see yourself and so on. And I suppose like some sticking points it makes that clear. Or maybe like how you're not areas where you're like looking at things really, really differently so that you can talk through those things. Right now, this takes time, right? I mean, like this isn't like you're done in 45 minutes. Okay, we're done. What kind of time frame are we looking at if you want to go through SYMBIS? And SYMBIS, while it stands for Save Your Marriage Before It Starts, and we'll get to this in a moment. This is also, like you said, helpful for married couples.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that in a second. But what would you say, to somebody about how much time this takes?
Yeah, it's been different for different couples depending on their situation and how deeply we go into these conversations. The assessment itself takes about 30 minutes. So that's preliminary. And then once you take the assessment, both partners take the assessment, then you meet with a facilitator. And that, in my experience, has taken as little as 3 sessions. And I think usually 5 or 6, and then I've gone as long as 10. So it just depends on how long or how many conversations, how frequently we have to work through different things, what kinds of things the couple themselves has already worked through, because a lot of times they've had conversations about finances, or they've worked through stressful times, or they've managed conflict themselves. And so if that is the case, if they've had a lot of experience working through some of these things themselves intuitively, then the sessions, the whole process is a lot narrower or a lot shorter.
And can this be of value to people who, like, they're not Christians? They're just interested in preparing for their marriage?
Yes, definitely. There is a short spirituality section at the back or at the end of the compiled assessment that talks about spirituality. For the most part, 95% of it is really practical and really just like research-based and really practical. So you can talk through all of these tools and things. It really helps if, the facilitator coming from a spiritual perspective with a couple that has a church background as well, because we can reference things like, this is why we want to communicate this way, because this is the loving way, and this is the way that, Jesus would treat each other and those kinds of things. But in the absence of that kind of spiritual background, it's still really helpful and really practical. So, yes.
Okay. And so like, and what would you say, like, who needs to do this kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. I would honestly say anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody that is planning on getting married, and anyone that is already married. Especially if it's been a handful of years since you've done your own premarital counseling, if you never did pre-marriage, setup or assessments and those kinds of things, if you didn't ever have these conversations ahead of time. I know that I've heard, lots of stories where couples who have been married for decades have said, we never talked about this, or it took 10 years to talk about this thing. We didn't realize this about each other. And so the beauty of SYMBIS is that it lays so much out on the table, and it covers, a lifetime of conversation, a lifetime of growing, a lifetime of working things out and learning each other. But what it does is it lays the groundwork for those conversations to be re-entered later on. If things that come up later on in 10 or 15 years, then you can come back to, okay, this is what I know about my spouse. This is what I remember talking about. One thing that I love about SYMBIS is that it really just talks about your DNA. It talks about how you were made. It talks about what, God has put in you as a human being. And all of that is good. There aren't personalities that are necessarily, put down or ones that are lifted up. It's just, this is what it is. And so knowing that about your spouse puts everybody on level ground, and you can revisit, okay, I understand this is the way that my partner ticks. And so I can adjust to that. So I think it's great for anyone and everybody at any stage.
And as easy as that answer is, it is the hardest answer for a lot of couples to come to. it is so interesting that in this area of marriage, we're like in our culture, it's so easy for us to understand that when we're going into a commitment of a career or a certain trade or an academics, that like we would want to gain insight and training and understanding about that. But there's something about marriage, which is the lifelong commitment. It is what your entire family and your life will be built on. There's just a wall that Sarah
And
and
if that goes wrong, it can make you quite poor.
Yeah. I mean,
in a whole lot of ways.
In all areas of life, but there's this interesting barrier that we always try to break through with couples, which is this idea that if I am doing an assessment like this, or I'm having the experience of what SYMBIS brings, that's somehow communicating that that we're wrong, that there's something wrong in
uncertain.
us. Yeah, and that just couldn't be further from the truth. Honestly, couples who choose to do a path like SYMBIS and prioritize their marriage, that's a good thing to do. It's one of the most it's so wise, it's so like, forward thinking to do. It doesn't indicate that anything is broken in you. If anything, it indicates that something, whenever a couple's coming to us like that, we're like, man, you're really thinking straight, because this is one of the most important decisions you're making. So
Yeah. Often, like, if people are coming to like a second or third marriage and they have children from other marriages and they're all going to live together, I look at them and I say, hey, you should do SYMBIS, but you really need to talk with a counselor before you get married, because this is complicated. But most people, it kind of doesn't matter like how old they are or whatever, like they don't think, they're so in love and they're so happy and they'll say, oh, I'm not gonna hate him, and they're like, oh, that's for other people. We're soulmates, and they don't want to do it. What would you say to a couple like that who maybe like it's not obvious to them that they could use that help right now? What would you say to them?
I mean, I would just say that that SYMBIS and that time that you are investing in, that is helping you understand about the choices that you can make in your relationship. And something I say almost every time I perform a wedding, I officiate a wedding, is I will say the emotions and the feelings of love will come and go. The feelings of them will come and go. The choice,
except for Sarah.
For Sarah.
Yeah.
We've been flying high for 18 years.
It's been amazing, actually, that every single day, yes, I have never felt more in love.
Yeah.
I
think it's important to clarify.
Yes,
that.
thank you for that. I'm going to thank you privately afterwards for that too. But to choose to love, that can be a choice you make every day. SYMBIS is not about enhancing the warm fuzzies in you. It's about helping you understand how to practically and in a very wise and discerning way choose how to communicate in love, how to relate to each other in love, all of those things. So
yeah, we were 100% that couple at 21 years
Oh,
old.
yeah.
That did not think that there would be conflict.
Oh, yeah.
Or that there
What
would
did they
ever
call
be
us?
a change.
What was we're peacekeepers? Is that right?
Well, I think you're thinking of we were a traditional couple.
Traditional couple.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but just, flying high on whatever emotions we had going on, and, everything had been great up until that point. And, we could point to several times, at different points over the years where we've been like, what in the world is going on? And so having tools, and I think, honestly, SYMBIS has helped me and helped us in having these conversations that are always going to need to happen. Yeah. Just about, being on the same team and understanding what's maybe going on in each other's heads and each other's hearts and what our needs might be and how we communicate and those kinds of things are so helpful, because regardless of what you think your future is going to look like, it's hard. Life is hard. Relationships are hard. Living in the same house with someone is hard. Kids are hard, so all of that. And if you have the tools, then you can remember that all of those hard things don't need to impact how you feel about each other and how your relationship plays out, because those are auxiliary things. And so having the tools helps you to keep, the main thing, which is we're a team and we do love each other and we chose this and we can keep choosing this because we have the tools to keep choosing it.
Sometimes when Sarah and I are not having one of those days like you described, no, we are. Sometimes when we're like annoying the other or something, we say this, and we say it, kind of jokingly, but really it is a reality. We'll say, at least I'll say, I choose to love you right now. Because, whatever.
It's not a feeling. It's definitely a choice right now.
Yes, I choose to love you right now. But really, we say it and we joke and we laugh. But really, that is so much of what SYMBIS offers you, is the ability, the tools to understand in the moment, however your emotions are flying, what you mean to each other, and how to choose practically to relate to each other, communicate to each other.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have just a few. There's so much helpful that's there. Yeah. We have just a few minutes left here, and I do want to talk about SYMBIS Plus, because something Tracy and I did. Tracy, my wife, she's also certified facilitator, and something we did for our 30th anniversary. Before we went on our anniversary trip, she was like, "Let's do SYMBIS and let's generate the report and let's talk over this while we're on our trip." I was like, "Okay." Well, it was so revealing, and but it gave us, even after 30 years of being married, gave us plenty to talk about and unpack, and ways, even strategies to strengthen our relationship. So how does SYMBIS Plus work? What's involved with that there?
Yeah, so the questions are the same up to a certain point. When you enter in, I think there's one question that says, when is your wedding date? And if that date is in the past, then it automatically kind of switches to this SYMBIS Plus. So the questions change slightly in certain areas. So it really, that's the smart, the intuitive part of the assessment. And so, it's slightly tailored towards understanding that you have been living together for a while, that you have lived some life together, you might have kids, whatever. And so that it kind of changes the trajectory slightly.
Okay. It's just as powerful. We've talked a lot about the assessment today, and really SYMBIS is all based off that initial assessment. That's what drives each of the sessions. But really, SYMBIS is the entire process of when you sit down. And sure, the assessment is the material that gets you going, but it is the organic process of you sitting down and you hearing these things said out loud to you, talking to each other. Really, most of a SYMBIS session is, well, here's one category of how you scored or how you look, and then it's just, what do you think about that? And what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? And the kinds of conversations that you get to have in SYMBIS, those, you can take the assessment. The assessment can only be taken once. That's 30 minutes of your life. But Sarah and I, the couples that I love taking couples through SYMBIS, because every time we have a session with a couple, I feel like we have content and material that comes up for us to talk about for our own marriage. And it's just, it peels back another layer. And that's why SYMBIS Plus just as powerful. We're SYMBIS plus, because every time we take a couple through a session, our marriage gets better. So it's for everybody.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to look into this, if they're from River City Church, actually that the facilitation can be done without a cost. That's kind of cool. But suppose you don't want to do this with somebody or you think they knew too much about me, or I really don't need for them to see our dirty underwear, so we're just gonna we're gonna do this some other way. What is another way that someone can get a facilitator, maybe like apart from their community or apart from anyone that they knew previously.
Yeah.
If you go to the SYMBIS website, there is a pretty clear link that says something like find a facilitator. And so some facilitators have chosen to publish themselves online or be accessible online. So then you could just sort through and find.
Yeah, they're kind of all over the country.
And we can make sure that SYMBIS Global site gets put in the show notes, and if somebody wants to find the link to that,
yeah. And if somebody is a part of River City Church, how could they sign up for this?
Oh, well, I mean, certainly you can go to rivercity.info, and you'll see on there's a resources tab, and you'll be able to navigate there. I would recommend going to, there's a coaching resource there. And you could sign up for that. If you just want to like earmark in there as you are filling that out that you're looking for marriage, you saw this podcast and you're looking for coaching in marriage, you can write the word SYMBIS in there, spell it however you want, it's okay, or look at the show notes if you want to get the spelling right. We'll know what you mean, and we'll connect you with an instructor at River City.
Okay. Oh, super. Okay. Well, everybody, there you have it. This is just a resource that I would say is painless. I mean, it's this kind of thing that you're not going to lose something by spending time on this. And if you can approach your relationship with humility, recognizing everybody can use help in their relating, there's probably a lot of grace to be found there. So I just want to encourage you, if you're going to get married, if you've been married for a while, why not try this track? And we would love to help you forward with that. If you're a part of River City Church, like I said, there's a way for you to connect. I think we have five different individuals who are certified in this way. All right. Well, thanks so much, Adam and Sarah, for being with me today. And we'll look forward to connecting with you all soon. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Well, thanks again for checking out today's podcast. We're so glad that you did. And hey, I just want to mention, would you do us a favor and rate this content on whatever platform you're consuming it on? You can also share our posts on social media, or even share the content with others that you think it would benefit. Shoot them a quick text or give them a phone call. We want to help get more tools and resources out to others, and you can be a great way of helping us accomplish that. You can be on the lookout for our next River City Waves podcast to drop the first and third Mondays of each month. Again, we hope you enjoyed today, and we'll see you back here next time on River City Waves.